everybody, this is Tim Sutton. I'm here to bring you a new perspective. If you're not familiar with the show, I appreciate you being here. Everybody that has seen the show before, I believe this is episode 21 of our second season. But for those who are not familiar with me, I am a law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia, going on 34 years. And for the past 20, I have worked with families dealing with disabilities, which I prefer to call differabilities. Everybody has abilities, but some people just do things a little bit differently. And if you've seen the shows, I try to bring on individuals who are making an impact in the differability community. My main focus has primarily been autism, intellectual disability, Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia. But everybody matters, everybody counts, and we need to understand, we need a new perspective, we need a better understanding of other people's lives and what they're dealing with. Last week, one of the members of our board for the nonprofit we have here locally in Richmond, Virginia, a betterunderstanding.org, reached out, and we were absolutely amazed that we made contact and we got responses from our guest and his people that are working with him. And we were able to get him on the show tonight. So his name's Jay Allen. If you're not familiar, he's a country artist. He's got music out there, and he's currently on The Voice. I believe he's on Team Gwen Stefani. So we spoke yesterday, and he agreed to come on to talk about his journey with Alzheimer's, dealing with his mom. And I just a few minutes of researching him, I've learned so much about him. And having a conversation yesterday, I was like, we've got to have him on to share this story, because I think he is impacting, and he is going to impact a lot of people, more people in the future. So welcome, Jay. I appreciate you coming on to be with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
So tell us, I really appreciate you being here, but your mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and people are really surprised to hear the age, 51 years old, because so many people think Alzheimer's, they think of the elderly, and they don't quite understand that there are people in their 30s, 40s, 50s that are being diagnosed. And I know your mom passed away when she was 54. Can you tell us how that, I guess, hearing it for the first time, the diagnosis, how did that impact you?
Yeah, so I'll never forget that phone call from my dad. I grew up in a little town in northeast Iowa called Cedar Falls. And I moved to Nashville, was, deep into my music career already when I get this phone call. My mother had gone to the same place of work every morning for years and years and years. He said, your mom called me this morning, and she was in tears because she had pulled over on the side of the road, forgotten where she was going, asked him to come pick her up. At that point, she was 51 years old, and that's when she was officially diagnosed with what's called early onset Alzheimer's. So they call it early onset because she was so young. Right. Now I've even heard stories of people being diagnosed at my age, 36 years. So it is a misconception that people tie Alzheimer's to the elderly. It's not just the elderly. It affects everyone of all ages. I just played a show in Virginia actually a couple of weeks ago, and a young girl brought her mom. And her mom was only 40 years old, and she was pretty far gone. So I was very uneducated until my mother was diagnosed. But now, we know it's a very real thing. It happens to people of all ages.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. What's your knowledge, or what you knew about Alzheimer's or your other dementias? Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. The thing is, Alzheimer's is an actual disease. But there are over 100 things out there that can cause forms of dementia. Just Alzheimer's is one of them. So as far as your knowledge prior to your mom's diagnosis, there wasn't any knowledge there?
I had zero knowledge. Growing up, I think, if we were knowledgeable, if we were educated, we would have saw the signs earlier. Now looking back, we think that she was probably actually, had an onset when she was in her 40s. She wouldn't play brain games with us or any sort of trivia games with us because she was embarrassed that she didn't know the answers. So I think there was an early onset for her, probably actually technically in her 40s. So previous to that, I didn't know anything about dementia. It was never a conversation. It was always something that we just heard of that happened to other people. But once it happened to us, I did everything in my power to educate myself. Even more so, how is it caused?
Right.
And now we've learned there's so many different things that can possibly trigger it. For us, we actually found out genetically it passes down through the oldest daughter of every generation.
Okay.
So it was, my mother's mother, and my great grandma even, and now my one of my I have two little sisters, and the middle would be the oldest daughter. She's terrified, that
I'm sure.
she's next, and she's only 30 years old. So she does everything in her power to make sure that she's not going to get this disease.
Yeah, and the tough thing about that is that it's a beta amyloid plaque that builds up in the brain, and it just starts attaching to the synapses where the information goes, and it chokes them off. And some of the research I've done and talking to some neurologists said that plaque can start forming 15, 20 years before you even start noticing any not behavioral, but memory issues.
Right.
And it's interesting because you don't pick up on, because a lot of times they're very subtle. Forgetting names, or hey buddy, I haven't seen you in a long time, or you can play it off and you don't really pick up much on it, so it just sneaks in. And one of the toughest things I have to do routinely is give presentations, do classes for people, senior citizen police academies, people who are being affected, and it's very depressing. And I'm up there giving them news that's not very good news, but it amazes me how appreciative they are, even those who are dealing with it, that somebody's getting that information out. And, it's a shame, but, I admire you being able to take your platform and go out there and still reach so many lives in your mom's name.
Well, yeah, it started with, I'm going to do everything in my power to fight for my mother. How can I do that? I won't preach, but, I will openly talk about my faith. I believe God gives us gifts. Mine is he gave me a voice, gave me the ability to write songs. And so I wrote a song about it, and I think he honored that and he used it. And then it turned into, this is not just a fight for my mother and my family. This is something that's going to help bring healing and connectivity to a lot of people. And I saw that just naturally and organically happen. So I ran with it, and I got to announce this on the show, The Voice, a couple weeks ago, that we did a fact check and found out I've helped raise, now close, over $50 million to help fight against this disease. But for me, it's a lot more than that. It's, even bringing attention to caregivers, you're out there educating law enforcement, and I'm bringing, awareness to the people that are having to take care of these people that have Alzheimer's and dementia or Lewy body, all these things, and there's just so many elements to the disease that are not spoken about. And I think it stems back to, it's hard to talk about. It's uncomfortable, so it's kind of become my duty, my obligation, which I'm proud of, to make it almost like, okay, cool to talk about this, I take a lot of pride, and I've created a safe place for people to talk about this, to share their story.
And you need a safe place, because it's, you listen to your song, Blank Stares, and it will literally make you cry, because whether it's professionally or personally, most of us know somebody or we're affected by it, but sometimes we just put it aside and we compartmentalize it and put it somewhere. And right now the statistics, 65 years old, it's about a 10% chance you're going to develop Alzheimer's. 85 years old, it's about 49, 50%. So yeah, you think about the old people developing it, but in fact, there are people so much younger, and it's a journey. And like I told you, I remember the first time I had to speak to a group of elderly individuals. I'm telling them about Alzheimer's and what it does and how it just erases that short-term memory. And I had a wife sitting there just crying, and I felt terrible. And at the end, the husband actually stood up and he said, I just want everybody to know I have Alzheimer's. He said, I've never wandered off and gotten lost, but I've been to the same place over and over and over again for the first time. And I felt terrible, but they came up and they were so thankful that somebody is telling people what it's about. And there need to be more of us out there, whatever method we have to do it. Yours, music, going and sharing your story. And I appreciate what you're doing. And the thing about understanding, I mean, how did you get an understanding of what was going on with your mom? Did you just go online research, or how did that go about?
All the above. Walking right into the fire. Thank God we have the internet in our pocket these days. So just, and for me, it's, even when my mom died, I had to continue being an artist. I was actually on the road when I got the phone call from my sister that it was going to, they're thinking she was going to take her last breath that night,
Wow.
So we pulled over the van. My band wrapped their arms around me on the side of the road somewhere in between South Carolina and Georgia, and we cried and had my last conversation with my mom. But I had to continue, even after that day, I had to stay out on the road and be an artist and be a musician.
She would have wanted that, I'm sure.
She would have, and that put me into a position where I told her, and during that conversation, I made her a promise: I'm going to tell your story. I'm going to sing this song every day for the rest of my life till I take my last breath. And so I do that, and it's opened up a portal. It's like cracking open a door, and then people barge through it. Where we talk about this safe place where I'll put on a whole show, play for 2 hours, even in a club somewhere, and I'll have a line of half drunken people wanting to tell me their stories of loss. Suddenly you realize, I realize it's a fact, but I realize because I walked into that fire that this has affected everyone. It's what is it, the 6th leading cause of death in America, and I have strangers lay their head on my shoulders and cry as they tell me, they're losing their mom or their dad or their uncle or their brother even. That's really been my education, is just the hard knocks route, listening to everyone's stories. I think I've become more of a professional listener than anything. So.
Well, it's like we talked about yesterday. It's, you've got a ministry there, and I feel like what I do is a ministry in itself, and being able to reach out to those caregivers, because there are a lot of people say that those caregivers suffer just as much, if not more, than the person with Alzheimer's, because they're losing that person. They're watching them disappear, and to be able to be that support for those caregivers is enormous.
Well, I mean, I'll take the opportunity to talk about caregivers. I'll start with my family. My dad has a full-time job. He works at John Deere in Waterloo, Iowa. And so he works 70-hour weeks, but he'd have to come home to his wife slowly. For us, it was quickly. She was diagnosed when she was 51, passed 2 years and 9 months later. So every day coming back home from work, to her slowly deteriorating in front of him and having to do things and see things that a husband should never have to do. My little sister, I have one little sister that lives in Oregon, but one that still lives in Des Moines. And so she would make that drive 3-4 times a week to come take care of mom, do things for a mother that a daughter should never have to do, and see things that a daughter should never have to see. I had an uncle that left everything in Austin, Texas, my mom's little brother, quit his job, came and lived with us full time until we could figure out a caregiving situation for her. I just had a conversation with, actually, I finally, over the years, finally able to connect with my mother's caregivers. So we finally brought a nurse on board, a traveling nurse. Okay. And so it got to the point where my dad, he couldn't afford to bring her anymore, but she volunteered her time and would just come. Wow. Even though she wasn't getting paid, she would drive a couple hours, a couple times a week to spend time, do crafts with her. So there's people out there that are, I call them, they're a different breed. They're real life angels, where it's just, they're built for it and it's their passion, but they don't get recognized, man. And they definitely don't get any financial benefit from it for the most part. So I will do everything in my power to raise up caregivers. And there's a lot out there. I hope some are able to listen to this and just realize, how much they mean to so many people. So if you're listening, if you're a caregiver, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
No doubt. And you've done a lot of work with Alzheimer's Association. I'd encourage people to check out the website, because there's stuff on there and talking about how many unpaid caregivers, how much time and effort is being spent with these unpaid caregivers, care partners, whatever you want to call them, that these are family members and they're doing it up. But then you look at people who have to be placed in assisted living or nursing homes, and the costs and how difficult it is for families to travel that journey. And what I love about what I do is I don't think the general public expects to have somebody with a gun and a badge come down and sit at your kitchen table and kind of draw you a timeline of what Alzheimer's and these dementias is doing and explain to you what's going on in that person's mind. And I've had a lot of classes that I've taught where people come up afterwards and say, there was so much anger because grandma was yelling and screaming. She became somebody else. And now this class has given me closure because I realized that was not my mom. That was not my grandmother. That was the disease itself.
Right. I love what you're doing, Tim. I think it's badass. I'd love for you
Well, I
to sit down
appreciate
at
it.
the bar. I'd love for you to sit down at my bar with your gun, put your gun on the table, and let's have a real man conversation. But
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
and I'll share this, and I'll make sure everyone knows what you're doing. I think it's really special, and I think it's just going to continue to grow, brother. So please keep it up.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. And you brought up a point, and I would, you talk about Alzheimer's Association, and this is how bad this disease is. The Alzheimer's Association says that it's right now it's the sixth leading cause of death. But if you think about it, the gentleman who has Alzheimer's wants to go home, and that's one thing people need to listen for when they start saying, "I want to go home." That could be at a physical place where they lived 40 years ago, and sometimes I think it's they want to go to a place where they feel comfortable and relaxed, and they don't have that confusion going on. But when that gentleman has Alzheimer's and he wants to go home to wherever he thinks is home, and he walks out of the house and wanders into a pond and drowns, what does that death certificate say? He drowned.
Yeah.
Or if somebody's brain, that beta amyloid plaque builds up in the brain, and they are having a hard time getting those muscles to be able to swallow food, and they're eating and they choke to death, what does that death certificate say? So I would, I understand Alzheimer's Association's sixth leading cause of death, but I wonder sometimes if maybe, there's a little more to it.
Yeah, the numbers are skewed. Yeah, we experienced that with COVID, so I definitely agree with you. It reminds me of even this hurricane, dealing with the insurance companies saying that, your damage was caused by flooding. Well, the flooding was caused by the hurricane, so it's the same thing. Yeah, I resonate with that very much so.
Well, you've got the voice going on. And can you tell everybody about the concert you were talking about down there for help everybody in Florida?
Yeah, so super long, sad story short, but I'm engaged to country artist Kylie Morgan. We kind of came up in Nashville together. We met here in Nashville. She's from Oklahoma. I'm from Iowa. And have been together for going on 8 years now. And we're set to get married October 1st on Fort Myers Beach because of our deep-rooted connection with the people of Fort Myers.
Right.
Well, out of all the times and of all the places, Hurricane Ian wiped out our favorite place and completely destroyed our wedding venue. So we had to, obviously we canceled. My first intuition was, how do I get there to help? Because I'm very hands-on, and they wouldn't let me on the beach, canceled our flights, shut down the bridge, shut down the airport. So my next thought was, well, I'm really good at helping raise money. That's a big part of what I do, just for different causes. So I kind of used all the experience I've had in raising money over the years for Alzheimer's. I put that to use towards building a benefit concert here in Nashville, set to be next Monday, October 17th. It is a lineup of class act artists and songwriters. A lot of them have had a lot of success. Walker Hayes, been a friend of ours since before Walker Hayes had all the success he had the last couple of years.
Right.
So he volunteered his time. Everyone's volunteering their time. Dierks Bentley's Whiskey Row, very well-known venue here in Nashville on Broadway, offered their venue to us free of charge.
Awesome.
And in a less than a week's time, we sold out all the tickets. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's been, people have been talking about it on the news, all over social media. So hopefully we'll be able to, I know for a fact we will be able to write them a big check on Tuesday the 18th and send it down there to help out. So.
Well, if anybody out there can't go to the concert, it can't make it to the events, how can they help with that?
Yeah, so if you go, I'm sad to say I don't know the exact domain, but it's our URL, but it's just search Fort Myers Beach Women's Club.
Okay.
And they have a link on there where you can donate directly. That's actually the lady I was talking about earlier, my connection.
Right.
With Fort Myers, Mary Torgerson. She started, she runs Fort Myers. I think she's the director of the Women's Club there. And so they set up a link on their website. You can you can donate directly to the people who have really lost everything on the beach.
Right.
And then also we're going to stream live. We're going to go live on all social media platforms. So you can watch the event, and then we'll have links up so you can donate directly through Facebook Live or Instagram Live.
Awesome. And yeah, I noticed, and you do a lot of visiting with individuals who are suffering from Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies, and stuff. And that's one thing that it impresses me, that you're out there still meeting with people, meet and greet, and spending time and sharing your story. You're listening to their stories, and it takes a special person to be able to take you. I know you're getting pulled every which way, but being able to take your time and take some time to spend with them, and you know be that ear that they can have to talk into.
Well, to be very honest, which I've learned, being honest and transparent and authentic and all those things are really how you connect with people, and how you make a change in the world. So for me, I'll be, completely raw and honest right now. One of my biggest regrets is when my mom got sick, I went to war and I did everything in my power to raise money and bring awareness, but I didn't spend time with her. And that is my biggest life's regret, that I just didn't spend time with her.
Well, but you did your part. You didn't turn your back and just go your own direction. You still played an active role. Whether it was being right beside her side all the time, right beside her all the time, you were doing something. You were still making an impact, not just for everybody, but for her. And I know she's looking down now, just proud of you. And the one story I read about you was, I know your mom and dad came to your house and opened the door, and you said your mom pretty much looked right through you.
Yeah.
And there was this time when you sang her, and I think you were dancing with her, and it's like all of a sudden that light bulb came on, and she seemed to remember some things,
Mhm.
like remembered who you were and what you were doing. And we talked about the music therapy, how important it is, and how it will bring some of those memories back. But just knowing that that person is still in there, and if anybody's ever dealt with it, you probably have heard they had a good day or that it was a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting with music, and your situation, some others I've heard, I tell people that you turn the light bulb all the way in and turn it on, it comes on. You back it off 2 turns, 3 turns, it's completely off. But if you turn it back another turn and a half, it's off. But what happens if you shake it a little bit? You might get a flicker. So they're not completely gone.
That's right.
They're still there.
Yep. That's the power of music, man. We were talking about the universal language,
Yeah.
It's crazy how the melodies and the music just trigger a sense of nostalgia. They
Right.
take, even in our present healthy minds, we hear a track from our childhood or even high school or college. It takes us back to the moment. It makes us feel something. So that's what it does for even the sickest of minds. I experienced that with her. You talked about that moment. People that have dementia, Alzheimer's, anything like that, they have a glossy look in their eyes. They're not present. They're not there. And the moment that we walked in the door of that venue here in Nashville, she saw the band on stage that went away, and she was back. She told me, well, we danced on the dance floor, and she rubbed my back. She leaned in. She goes, "Oh, Jay, it's so good to see you. I love you, son." And I was just like, dang, music did that.
And I bet you at that point that was something you needed to hear.
Yeah, man, it lit something up inside of me. It gave me just a sense of, I had just so much energy suddenly. Like, okay, there's a tool out there that I can utilize that I'm actually pretty dang good at to help work against this. I really haven't since even after she passed away. I think I even got even more revved up.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about caregivers, and one thing, unfortunately, I know a lot of times you're elderly with Alzheimer's and dementias. They live a very private life, and what bothers me a lot of times is once somebody gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's, a lot of times that friend network just vanishes, and I'm like, it's not contagious. That's when they need you the most.
That's right.
And what recommendation would you give people out there if they know somebody that is a caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's or any dementia or any disability? What would be your message for people to make that journey easier for those individuals?
Yeah, I think it's just being an ear. I think it's so easy to force even with my mother. Like there was like a fine line where it was like, Mom, I want you back so bad, like we need to go do this, or like, why are you in a bad mood? Like you have to remind yourself that they are sick, like there's some things that you just can't fix. But I think if you're just an ear, especially to the caregivers, there's a portal that opens up. I was actually just really inspired by someone that has Lewy body. We were talking about him, Kevin Dill.
Right.
He is he's far enough along where you can experience it with him,
Right.
but he's still aware and he knows that he's sick.
Yeah.
So he has moments of come and go, but even in his, in his demise, he is wanting to spread awareness about it. And he's actually he worked for the VA in his local area. He was a Marine. And he had obviously was known and respected, but he's gone out of his way, and his family and his wife especially have assisted him in going out of his way to put on events and raise awareness and raise money to go towards this. So there's people that out there that are doing beautiful things. I think it's just, there's a fine line, and you have to find a deep patience within yourself with the person that's sick and try to figure out what actually is going to be best for them. I think every scenario is different. So it's a little tricky.
Well, I tell people that's when they need you the most. That's when the phone call, hey, why don't you get out, go run some errands, and do something? We'll come over there and, sit with them for an hour or two. They need that break because so many of them are trying to do it on their own. They don't know where to turn to get help. And, any caregiver is going to tell you, a husband, wife, granddaughter, grandson, in their mind, they are the best caregiver for that person. There's nobody that does it better than them. And they're hesitant to let somebody else come in because they feel like they need to be the ones that are there, but they need a break. If not, what happens when they wear themselves out and all of a sudden they end up in the hospital and they're laying up looking at these bright lights thinking, okay, well, who's taking care of them now? So we really need to reach out to those caregivers and really offer some help, assistance, and love for the basic, just love them.
Yes, if you can offer help to a caregiver, please do. I can't imagine having a full-time job. All of us work really hard, but working, 9 to 5 or even more, and then coming home to another job, it's never ending. There's not a shut off. So if you can offer a moment of relief, I try my dangest. Obviously, I represent this cause. It's my passion. It's my purpose. But when I go to a town to play at a venue, I'm going to put on a party.
Right.
I'm gonna, if you want to drink a beer with me, we're gonna drink beers all night. We're gonna let loose. I'm gonna give you a moment to relax and enjoy yourself. So that's a big part of what I do as well. But also, it got to a point for us where we had to make that tough decision where I thought we never would have to put my mom in a care facility center.
Right.
And got to the point where we did. She lost her ability to speak, and then she lost her ability to swallow, and then there was no other options.
Right.
So never forget the day I had to write my dad the biggest check I've ever written and send it to him just so my mom could stay alive.
And the tough part of this, and it comes with a lot of guilt because it's not something you want to do, but people need to understand that the nature of Alzheimer's, sometimes it gets to the point where you just can't do it anymore. And I tell people, don't make those promises that, hey, we're never going to put you in a assisted living or anything like that, because the nature of it, sometimes it just gets to be to where you can't do it. And you don't need that guilt hanging over your head. You need to make sure your loved one's taken care of. So,
Right.
Well, Jay, I want to thank you. Dude, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your story and everything you're doing out there. If there's anything I can do to help you, please contact me, because we have two different backgrounds, but we're trying to get the same message out.
That's right. Well,
good luck with everything on The Voice, man. I hope everybody out there, I'm posting and sharing, get you some votes, but just go out there and kill it, man.
Thank you, Tim. Hey, man, keep it up. Keep grinding, man. I always tell people it's like dropping a pebble in a pond. You don't necessarily see the effect around you at first, but it's making a ripple effect, and you're touching people's lives. So keep it up as well. We're friends.
Well, God bless you, Jay. Good luck with everything, and hopefully we'll stay in touch. Take care of yourself.
Sounds good. Take care, brother.
All right, man. Everybody, I hope you got something out of this. This is you think about it as a downer, talking about Alzheimer's and your dementias, and it's a tough road to ride. And hopefully we're able to give everybody some information and see some things going on, and we can all go out there and help people. So please check out the other shows. Please check out Jay. I want to thank Lauren Covey for helping make this happen. And thank everybody for watching. And Dad, thanks for watching. I love you.